I'm going to take you on a journey tonight. I know a lot of you know that Cricket and I went to Saudi Arabia back in 1994. We saw a lot of things. You know, we traveled. Before that time, we traveled all over the Middle East, into Israel, and down to South America, and to some islands off the coast, and all kinds of different places. In fact, I've got like 12 hours worth of video on my YouTube page for things that we video in the Holy Land, if you're interested in that kind of stuff. But tonight I'm going to take you on a trip that we were able to do while we were in Saudi Arabia. You know, we went there in 1994, and before I went there, I was really interested in Bible history and Bible archaeology and things, because I've been to the Holy Land already, and I saw Masada, and I saw all the temples, and I saw where Jesus walked, and then we did some stuff in Egypt, and I saw the big pyramids, and I saw all the temples there, and all kinds of stuff. I've been to Corinth, on top of the mountain above Athens, and I saw those ruins. So we've seen a lot of things over our time. But what I'm going to tell you about tonight is the most amazing thing that I've seen in my whole trip out of the country. Before I went, I was a real big fan of a guy called Ron Wyatt. Who's heard the name Ron Wyatt? A lot of you have. Okay, he was a Bible explorer, kind of like Indiana Jones in modern day. He would go around and try to find Bible sites and prove that they were real, and artifacts, and prove that they were real. So, kind of like John, I'm writing these things to you so you believe the Bible's real, you believe in Jesus Christ, and you'll accept Him. So that's his thought to do, to find things that would convince people that the Bible is absolutely true. And he found a lot of things. Some that you probably, that he's notarized from, they haven't really proven it all yet. But we're talking about several thousand years ago, so it's kind of hard to prove. He's also, in his studies, he found something he thought was the Ark of the Covenant. We'll talk about that another day, but he thinks he found it up under the Gordon's Calvary, right up under the cross. And which makes sense to me, that Jesus' blood would drop on the mercy seat from the cross. Obviously, it's closed up today, and the Jewish leaders and the Jewish scholars who are going to rebuild the temple soon will probably bring it out if it's there. But anyway, what I'm going to show you today happens to be a trip that Ron Wyatt took in 1978, and he discovered a place that he thinks is the true Mount Sinai. Now, if you look in your Bible today, you're going to see a map, and it'll show you the Sinai Peninsula between Egypt and Saudi Arabia. It's a big triangle-shaped piece of land, and right in the center of it, in your Bible map, you're going to see it'll say Mount Sinai. It's absolutely wrong, and I'm going to tell you why I believe it's wrong. I'm going to show you some evidence that we found that I think pinpoints exactly where the place is, and what it looks like, and what are some of the things that you'll find there if you would go today. So let's just start. I've got a lot of slides here. If you can't see them, move up. I hope you can see them. I'll try to make them big enough, but I just wanted to talk about them, and I've got a corner that I'll probably point a few things out if it'll work. Adventures in Saudi Arabia, and it's a trip to the Red Sea crossing that I believe it is, and the Mount of Moses. And these pictures that you're going to see are from Ron Wyatt's museum. He had a museum up in Coopersville, Tennessee, I think's the name of it. It's closed today because he's dead. He died several years ago. But some of the pictures come from his museum. Some of them come from a trip that we took, and our family took, Jeff and Sandra. It also comes from a friend of ours. He happens to be a Mormon friend. His wife's a Mormon pastor. John Reed and Shelley Reed, I never could win him to Christ, but he was still a friend of mine. We had obviously debatable differences in our theology. But John Reed and a bunch went there also, and I'm going to show you some of the things. But anyway, this is the traditional route of the Exodus that you're going to find in your Bible. Okay? And you're going to see that the Israelites left this area up here in Egypt. And they came down, and this shows them crossing a place called the Sea of Reeds. It's a very shallow body of water. And then they came down the side of the Red Sea, down to a place here called, they call it today, Mount Sinai. This is the Sinai Peninsula. Okay? And there's a lot of things wrong with this route that we get to. You see Saudi Arabia over here on this side. That's Saudi Arabia, that's Egypt proper over here, and that's the Sinai Peninsula, which is actually part of Egypt also. Here's what's wrong with it. First of all, there's no crossing site of the Red Sea. They say they crossed this little sea of reeds. This is a very shallow body of water. So it might have been a miracle to cross it, but it was really a miracle to drown Pharaoh's army in a water only this deep. I mean, he had a huge army with him, and to drown them in that little body of water would have been an extra miracle. So there's no evidence in their line that they say they went across the Red Sea. There's absolutely no evidence there. You go around the map, you don't see any evidence that 2.5 million Jews that were wandering around in the desert were ever in that place. There's not enough evidence of it. There's no Midian, okay? We know from the Bible that Mount Sinai was in the land of Midian because Moses saw it and he married Jethro's daughter and he went to the land of Midian to do that. And then it's in absolutely the wrong location. I'm going to show you why. So first of all, they don't cross the Red Sea. Most historians say, I just said that they thought they crossed from Sukkot through the Sea of Reeds, and it's too shallow for it, so that can't be the route they took. They needed to cross the Red Sea. Okay, the Red Sea is this body of water to this body of water all the way down. We live down here off of the Red Sea, just about here on the map. Okay, so they didn't cross. This is a picture of Mount Sinai in the Sinai Peninsula. And it's absolutely, Christian and I drove around. We were over there in Jeep, we drove all over Egypt, and we drove around this mountain looking for any kind of evidence we could find in this place, like campsites or old wells or anything of that nature. And we didn't find anything. I mean, you think 2.5 million Jews that came there and camped around that place would leave some evidence. We didn't find anything. There wasn't any altars, there wasn't any big piles of rock where they would have been building their houses or their little places of dwelling or whatever. So we didn't find any evidence there. There's no Midian. I told you Moses, he lived in the land of Midian. But you remember when the story of Moses, he got in trouble because he killed one of the Egyptians that were being hard on some of the Israelites, and he buried him in the sand. And then the next day he went out there, and there were a couple of the Israelites fighting, and Moses tried to break them up, and they said, "What are you going to do, kill us like you did that man yesterday?" And Moses got scared. He said, "They know I've done this." So he left, and he fled to the land of Midian. He fled from Pharaoh, is what it says right there in Exodus 2:15, and to live in the land of Midian, where he sat down by a well. In Acts chapter 7, it says, "This is the saying, Moses fled and became a dweller in the land of Midian, where he had 2 sons. And when it was 40 years had passed, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire in a bush in the wilderness of Mount Sinai." So we know that Mount Sinai has to be wherever Midian is, okay? The Bible is very clear on this. No other way. And Exodus knew where it was. He was tending the flock for Jethro in that place, and then he went up to Mount Horeb, which is the mountain of God. That's where the Lord appeared to him in the bush. So this is also a Bible map. It may not be in your Bible. We've seen a lot of Bibles, and it shows that the land of Midian is over here in Arabia, clearly marked the land of Midian. Okay, there's a city there called Al-Bad today. And we know that as the home of Jethro. The locals there know it. There's a well there. I'm going to show you the well. And so we know the Midianites lived in this area right here. And they were cousins of Moses, by the way. So Moses traveled probably to get there. I think I've got his route. Let's see. I think I might have his route. Yeah, I do. This is probably how Moses went there. Okay, he fled from the area up here where he killed the thing. He probably came down. I think he probably came across straight here, but this map shows he came down and then he went around the Sea of Aqaba. This is the Red Sea, but they call it the Sea of Aqaba. And then he came down to that area in Midian. Okay, so Moses knew where it was, and he probably traveled across that route. This was a trade route, and this is also a trade route up on the top, up here. And this is the road of the Philistines. We know the Israelites didn't go that way because the Bible tells us they didn't go that way. Okay? So he came from this area down to Midian across the Sinai Peninsula. So the traditional Mount Sinai is in the dead center of the Sinai Peninsula here. That's where you find it on most maps. And the reason it's there is because Queen Helena, she's the mother of Constantine the Great. He was an emperor of Rome, okay? And she was a Christian. And she decided she was going to travel around the area and try to find biblical sites. So she did. She ended up in Egypt and found this mountain and just named it the Mountain of Moses, okay? And then all the Christians later just sort of adopted it as a real place. This tradition is her traditional place because she said it was. So you'll find that place in your Bible today only because of that, without proof, that they call it the Mountain of Moses, Mount Sinai. This is the site on the top of it, St. Catherine's Monastery. I've been there, and you'll see some pictures of me up there. This was built to recognize St. Catherine. She was a martyr, and they built that monastery in her honor. Okay, it's located up on the top of that, and they say that the burning bush that Moses saw is in this monastery. Well, we know it's not. I've been there, okay, and they show a living tree that's they've got in a big pot, transplanted from somewhere. But I know it's not the monastery, and that's me looking at the creek, and I was there to investigate the site to see what was up there. On the top of the monastery, you'll see the very, very top, that's a mosque. It's a Muslim mosque. And what normally would happen to all of the Christian sites, all of the holy sites, when the Muslims came into being in 500 AD, they went around to all these sites and they would build a mosque on top of anything religious. They did it on the top of the Temple Mount. There were 2 mosques there. But all over the country, where they would find other religions, they would desecrate it and build their own mosque and turn it into an Islamic site. That's what's on the top of it today. I believe this is the correct route for the Exodus. I'm going to show you why I say that. I believe they left this area right here from Goshen. They call it Goshen, and they traveled across the way Moses would have went, because Moses is leading them. Okay, and they came to this place just before Elim. Elim is a city at the very north tip of the Sea of Aqaba, and it says here that they were driven down into a small place by the Egyptians. If you'll remember that story where he drove them down into a valley and they dumped them out on the sea. Okay, I believe that's exactly what happens here. Okay, it's about 10 days travel from here to there, to that site right there. Pharaoh didn't start chasing them until after the 3rd day, probably the 4th or 5th, because he had to get his big army together. And when he caught up with them, they were somewhere here, and I think he drove them down in this area, into this closed place. And then here's how the Israelites got there from Goshen. And I just showed it to you a while ago. I believe they came down. These are the cities that they would have came to. And then when they got right here, they were drove into that wadi. And this is an aerial map of that wadi. This is Wadi Rutur. It's called Wadi Rutur. And it dumps them out on a great big sand beach called Nuweiba. It's on the Egyptian side of the Red Sea. The Sea of Aqaba, called Nuweiba. And the wadis are like rivers. They're like a riverbed. But in the Middle East, they're dried up because they don't have water all the time. So this is what they are. They use them kind of like highways. You know, they come through the mountains. The only place to go is follow the riverbed. Okay, like we would follow the creek bed or something. That's exactly what they do. So this is a wadi that I believe they came down into, because Josephus comments on it right here. He says, now the Egyptians had overtaken the Hebrews, and they prepared to fight them by the multitude, and they drove them into a narrow place. That's exactly what it is. If you're up in the wadi and you're looking down to the sea, okay, it's a narrow place. So the Egyptians had to trap. And if you remember, God left the tower of smoke behind them so the Egyptians couldn't see what they were doing. And now he put the fire up there so to protect them while they went on down and got to the sandbar or the sand place and dumped them out right here on this place called Nuweiba Beach. And it is big. We were there in 2003, I'm sorry. And today there's a big Hilton hotel built up over here, another hotel here. There's an old Turkish fort right here. There's parts of it right there, some kind of fort. But anyway, this is a great big sand flat out on the edge of the mountains, and it's cut off by mountains to the south, cut off by mountains to the north. So once they're there, there's no escape. The Egyptians had them cornered in this big sand flat. No way to get out of it. When Crick and I were on in the Sinai Peninsula, we were at a Jeep and we were driving to Nuweiba. And just as we come in, you see the Sea of Aqaba there. We were coming down the mountain over here, and we drove by this column, okay? And it's a huge column. It's been standing up. They've already stood it up and put it in concrete. And it's near where the Hilton Hotel is today. It's right over there. But anyway, this is a picture of Ron White back in, I'm not sure when it was, 84, when he was in front of the same column. Okay, that's Ron White and his team as they were rediscovering it in 84. He went in 78, got locked up for 80 days. Then he finally got permission to come back in 84. So he's there in 84. This is in Egypt. And he found that same column. Well, here I am standing beside the column. We just came out of the Jeep, Chris was taking a picture, and I found that same column. Now, there's another column, or there was another column on the Saudi side, according to Ron's studies. It wasn't there when we went, but there was an archaeological sign posed where it should have been, like this is archaeological sign, stay away or whatever. Okay, he says that column was laying on the beach in Saudi Arabia, and it has some Hebrew inscriptions on it that kind of led to that this is where the Red Sea crossing was, and they dedicated it to King Solomon. Okay, so it was an inscription by the Israelites to King Solomon to dedicate this area right here. Sorry about my stutter. But it wasn't there when we went, so I didn't get to see that column, and we don't know where it is today. This is me standing on the wave bridge right down below the Hilton Hotel, and I asked you, why would God put his people on that beach? Okay, we know that he did a miracle, that he parted the Red Sea. But why this place? Okay, the Sea of Aqaba has depths of 4,000 to 5,000 feet. The Sea of Aqaba. But from this sand flat right here, this is the topographical picture of the Sea of Aqaba here. This is Nuweiba, this is Saudi Arabia. In between this point here and that point there, there's a sand land bridge. It's about 200 feet deep today. 200 to 250 feet deep today. And it's a flat, smooth surface that goes from Saudi Arabia to Egypt. Probably the wash from the flood coming out of that Wahab river is a mountain kind of caved down and ended up into the sea, because there's a 17-mile dry riverbed on the opposite side from Saudi Arabia at the same place. So I don't know how this got there. That's just my estimate or my guess. But that's a land bridge, and that's a picture of this is a NASA picture, by the way. It's not mine. And it shows that land bridge coming across from one side of the sea to the other. This is 7 miles across, okay? And it's relatively smooth. This is a picture of an aerial photograph of the Nuweiba and the Saudi side, and that's probably the way it ends up right there. This right here, I tore it out of the dive magazine. I was a diver at the time, and Crick and I were certified back in '84, so we were divers when we were in Saudi Arabia, did any dives. And we were at this dive shop, and I picked up the magazine, and it was showing me the elevations of the dive sites. It mentioned several dive sites along the edge of Egypt. And then it showed this narrow, this shallow place between Egypt and Saudi Arabia in their dive magazine. So I know it's there. And then these are some pictures from Ron White and also some of the patterns of evidence people, where they had divers go into this area, and they found what they believe is encrusted axles and tires and wheels and things of the chariot. Because you know, coral, when it attaches to something, it takes a shape. If it's a rock or if it's a wall or a leaf or whatever, the coral grows all over it, and it will obtain, it will take up that shape. So you see some of these pictures right here. That probably looks like a chariot that's turned sideways. You got a wheel at the top, wheel on the bottom. You see the chariot. That's a picture of a chariot. This is a diver going down to some of the sides. I won't bore you with all these. There's another one. That doesn't look like anything to me, but I don't know what it ended up being. But this is one, this coral growth right here. You've got an artist rendition where he overlaid what an 8-spoke chariot wheel would look like, and exactly fits that coral growth right there. This is a gilded wheel that Ron White found. He's got pictures of it in his magazine. He had them in his museum for clothes. I don't know what they did with it. But that's a gilded one. It probably belonged to one of the elite Egyptians. You know, the higher up you go, you got some gold on or something. That's exactly what this was. It was gilded. And then this is a picture of a 4-spoke, like that one. That's a 4-spoke Egyptian chariot. And these are just some more of the families that they found right here. I'm not going to bore you with all those. Here's one with spokes sticking out of the side. You remember Ben-Hur? They had those big spokes sticking out of it. That looks like what that is to me. They would put knives and blades and all that stuff on them. Anyway, here's me and Cricket and Sam and Jeff and our 2 grandkids, Mackenzie and Keegan, and we're on the Sea of Aqaba on the Saudi side. We went up there in 2001, okay, after we read the Gold of Exodus and was really enthused about going to try to find it ourselves, but we're only, a day away, so why don't we do it? This is when we can travel. This is before 9/11. 9/11 was 2001, but this is early 2001. So we were still traveling. We went all over the desert. We camped outside on the beach or whatever. So we got in our Jeeps, 2 Jeeps, and we took off, and we were trying to find this place. And so we went all the way up to Alat in the north and came all the way down the edge of the Sea of Aqaba until we could find the land bridge. That's what we're looking for. So we're 40 miles down Alat, and we finally end up where we think the land bridge was. This is me. And this is a Filipino fisherman, a spear fisherman, and he's standing on the beach. They're fishing to go island to catch fish out on this place. And I'm asking him, I've got a picture on the map, and I said, where is this place? And he said, that's the place we dive it all the time. Oh, wow. He said, it's just a shallow, it starts shallow, but it gets fairly deep, but it's a smooth sand bed across the sea. And he said, that's it, we dive on and kill fish on it all the time. So we're at the place, we think. And then this is another picture of the current map of Jabel Al Lawz in Saudi Arabia. That's just an aerial picture with a highlight. This is me as we're approaching up to the mountain. The mountain's 6,000, almost 7,000 feet tall. And this is me in the Jeep. Chris is taking the picture. And I'm pointing to what I think is Jabel Al Lawz, or the tallest mountain in Midian. Okay, that's what the Bible tells us. Okay? When you get up to where I'm going to show you, this is just a picture of a mountain in Saudi Arabia called Jabel Al Lawz. It's actually the mountain of almonds is what it translates to. But that's what you're going to see in these photographs. You're going to see the top of that mountain, black rocks, and everything else down below it is normal color. Okay, and here's a map of where it's located at in northwest Saudi Arabia, and what's highlighted there is this mountain range. There's actually two mountains there. Magla is one of them, and Jabal Al Lawz, they kind of run together. Jabal Al Lawz is about 6,000 feet high from sea level, and if you look at this verse right here, here's the key to the answer. Galatians 4:25, and this is Paul writing, because Paul spent almost 3 years in Saudi Arabia, and he was probably under the tutelage of Jesus. He was learning from somebody in Saudi Arabia about what the gospel was. I believe Jesus was teaching him, but Jesus spent 3 years teaching his disciples. And Paul says, I'm going to call out a new season, and he spent the same time with Jesus in Arabia at this place learning about the gospel. But anyway, he says, for Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and it corresponds to Jerusalem, Galatians 4:25. This is a world atlas that I tore out a page and I found this. And if you'll notice that word corresponds to Jerusalem, that corresponds, the Greek word means it's like a line of soldiers. Okay? It's in line. It corresponds to whatever he's comparing it to. And it also, there's another verse in that same chapter right there that says, Jerusalem is above Saudi Arabia. If you look at this map, I've got Jabal Al Lawz right here. I've got Jerusalem up at the top, that blue right there, there's Jerusalem. And if you believe it or not, that blue line right there, I drew it on that map, is the north 28 longitude. They're exactly on the same longitude in that map. And right between them is a place called Petra. Who's heard of Petra? Okay, Petra, we think, is going to be a place where some of the 144,000 saved Jews at the end of time are going to be put in there for safety to keep the Antichrist from killing them. And we think it's going to be in that place, right there. So this is amazing because Jabel Al Lawz is exactly lines up with Jerusalem, exactly what it says in Galatians 4:25. This is Ron White. He's dead today. He's the founder of this place originally, okay, the one that really put it on the map and started all the conversation. A lot of people didn't believe him. I was one of them at the time. I was a little bit skeptical because he was finding so much stuff. I said, surely he can't find all this stuff. But anyway, I still followed him. And what happened after that, just another brief story, is when Creek and I got to Saudi Arabia, we ran across a book called The Golden Exodus. And it's about two other archaeologists called Bob Hornet and Larry Williams. They snuck into Saudi Arabia in 1988 to find the thing that you've heard about it, to find the place that Ron Watt had told them about, okay? They got in there at night, they discovered a lot of things, and their book is out. There's a lot of fiction in their book, by the way, but it's still an interesting read. And they've got a website today where they do this, okay? As we get closer, you start seeing this peak right here, and this peak is black on the top, and in Exodus 19:18 says, Mount Sinai was covered with smoke and became, because the Lord descended on it with fire, and the smoke billowed, and from it rose up like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain was trembled violently. That's what this rock is right here. This is a rock that we brought down from the lower parts, not from the top, but from the lower parts of the mountain. I'm going to show you that. But this is both of those mountain ridges, and it's black all the way across. So when God's power came down, he heated the whole top of that mountain. It says he sat down on top of the mountain, and he called Moses and Aaron up there to that place. This is a panoramic view of it. It doesn't really tell you much. All right, this is a picture. We're driving up the backside of the mountain. And what's interesting here is the Saudis are grading off the black rocks. They're covering up the history. They're taking the black rock off of the mountain. I think it's because they understand what it is and they don't want the Israeli history to be in Saudi Arabia, I believe. Okay? They didn't do a good job of it because today they've opened it up for tourism and you can go see the site. Okay, so they didn't completely kill it. But anyway, this is what it looked like when we were there in 2001. This is me looking at some of the rocks right there. And you see the rocks, as they turn up, they're black on the top. When you turn them over, they're natural colors. So it's kind of like you put rocks around your fireplace or your camping world outside, and you pile it up with wood, you burn it, pretty soon the rocks around it get black. But if you flip them over, they're still brown. That's what these are. And you see those rocks like that. These have been turned over. This is where they were carried up. And we were there looking at it. And here's one right here. It's about a half-inch deep in the rock. It took some kind of heat to do that. It's not just a little campfire. Okay, these rocks are burnt a half-inch deep from the top. There's some where I chipped off. I had a screwdriver and I chipped off some of the black so you can see that it's just on the top. Okay, it's not the rock. It's something burnt on top of the rock, whatever it is. This is a rendition of what I'm fixing to show you here. It's unbelievable. Turn this so I can see it. This is the peak that I showed you in the map right there. And down below the peak, you're going to see something here that we believe is the altar where Moses sacrificed animals. I believe that's what you're going to see. None of this is at Mount Sinai over in Egypt, by the way. Nothing. Okay? And the Bible tells you all about this. Around the mountain is 8 big piles of rock here that God told him to put signs up so people wouldn't come up there or they would die. Okay? And I'm going to show you one of these, so what I believe it is. And that in front of that is a big pile of rocks that's about 20 feet high, by the way. Huge rock. And I believe that is the altar of the golden calf, right there. Over here, you're going to see a guard shack. There's a well over here. And then around the bottom of this, there's 12 pillars. Remember, God told Moses to put up 12 pillars, for one for each of the Israeli tribes. And I believe that's what you find there. Interesting, this mountain also has a cave right up here. Okay? Who went to that cave? Elijah went to that cave. If you remember, he was running from Jezebel. He killed the priest of Baal, all the Baal worshippers. And Jezebel was chasing him, and he ran away. He ended up somewhere in between here and there, up under a tree, and said, God, I've had enough. Take my life. I'm done with it. Okay, I'm the only one left. And the angels came and ministered to him and said, gave him some stuff and said, you still got a long trip to go. And it took him 40 days to get here. He ended up in this place, and if you remember the story, that God showed himself to Elijah from this cave, and I'll show you the cave. This is just the top of the mountain. There's the black peak right there. The holy precinct with the golden calf altar over here. There's a big rock over here. Rephidim is an area that they ended up living in for a long time. And this is the place where Moses had struck the big rock and water poured out of it. Okay, the rock of Horus is what they call it. This is run by a sun in front of the sign that's there today. It says, stay away. This is an archaeological site. So they've got it fenced off. They don't want anybody in this area. Okay, those fences were there. We got run off when we were there, and I'll show you that. And Jeff and Sandra went back later with a English special forces guy, and they both got picked up and taken into questioning. They were released. They didn't arrest them, but they took all the pictures and all that kind of stuff away from them. So this is Ron White's son in front of where I'm going to show you here. This is that peak again. And the local veterans that live there, they call this Jabel Musa, the Mountain of Moses is what they call it. There's a lot of Jews that live there today that are all around. So if we would stop, and there aren't any places to stop, there'd be a petrol station where you could get gas or snack or whatever. And most of them would speak some English, and we could get enough English out of them to know that this is, they call it the Mountain of Moses, and there are a lot of Jews that still live today in this area. This is a picture of what we believe is the altar where they sacrificed from. They would bring the cows and the sheep and things in here, and then Moses would set up on the altar and he would sacrifice them. There's a big place at the end of it. It's got a bunch of ash where they burn the meat or whatever. And see, God's telling him in 2024 of Exodus, make an altar of earth for me and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, your sheep and your goats and your cattle. So I believe that's what this might be. There's a picture of it from the top of the mountain. And then this is a close-up picture of it right here. If you make an altar of stones for me, do not build it on dressed stones or stones that are cut out. Use natural stones, that's what he's telling them to do. And that's what you see right here. These are natural stones that they found in the area. And this is the police station there. There's a big fence that goes all the way down this lighting all over the top. And over in this place is some wells I'm going to show you later on where they would capture the water coming down off the mountain. And this, I believe, is the altar for the golden calf. It looks small at the moment, but it's about 20 feet tall. Okay? These are huge rocks. And the closer you get to it, you get closer to it right here, and you start seeing around it. That's the top of it. That's the top of the big rock, and I believe that's where the golden calf was. But you start seeing around it these petroglyphs that are all over it. Okay? These are Egyptian cows. Okay? And I believe this is whoever drew them said this is the place that where the golden calf was, because they're petroglyphs all around this big rock place. And I believe that's what you find. There's several more. I don't got limited pictures because I have 100, but anyway, these are, see, and something special here. See, under this cow right here, you see somebody holding the cow up under it. That's the way the Egyptians worship cows were. When you see the petroglyphs in the pyramids and around the temples, that's what you see. They'll have a cow and they'll have somebody holding the cow up. like this. Okay? See, this is an Egyptian drawing of an Egyptian bowline. That's kind of what they look like. Big long horns, and they would usually put something in the middle. They call it an ox that they worship. And then somebody would be pictured holding the cow up. Okay, we're worshiping this animal. Is basically what it says right here. Here's another one. It's an ox on the top of it. And then here, there's somebody out there from John Weeks' team that's looking for the boundary markers. Okay, I don't have a picture of this, but he had this picture, and I said, okay, I don't want to borrow that picture. So Jesus told him to put these boundary markers around the thing to keep people away. Okay, because where they're at is holy ground. And this is what he found. There's 8 of these. These are large piles of rock. Okay, they're not natural. Somebody piled them up there. And in the center of them, there's a big hole, like you would do if you stuck a big tree up or a big post. Yeah, and you would pile rocks around it to hold it up. We do it all the time here. And that's what I think they did here. I think Moses did that to put a sign up to tell his people, don't come any closer than this, because this is holy ground. You'll die if you step past this line. These are some marble columns that were there. I don't think these are from Moses. I think they were probably put later up by the Nabateans. Maybe they built a small temple there, or it could have been Jews later came down and built a little shrine or something to commemorate this area. I don't know. But those are not what Moses was told to put up. He put up 12 stones that would be sticking in the ground, kind of sticking up. Okay, rough cut stones, not hand cut stones. But these are perfectly carved. And there's on the back side of that mountain, there's actually a marble quarry there. So these came from local here. They're not what Moses was told to do. This is the rock at Horeb. It's on the back side of the mountain. This rock is about 40 foot high. Okay? And you can see it's exactly split right down the middle. And if you remember the story, the Israelites are camped everywhere. They don't have any water. They're complaining to Moses, why do you bring us out here? We don't have anything to drink. We barely have something to eat. You know, and you bring us out here to die? And Moses said, take care of it. Take that rod that you used to part the Red Sea and go up to this rock. And when you get up there, strike the rock, and I will let water come from that rock. I believe this is a rock. And the reason I believe it is this is 40 foot high. And if you look right here in the center of this rock, I'm fixing to show you a blow-up of it. It's eroded from the inside out. It's not wind erosion. I believe it's water coming out of that rock. It did this. It washed away the bottom of that rock. That's my belief. True or not true, that's what I believe it is. Okay, and then here's one of the wells that were down on the side of a little bit, a stream running down through here where they dammed it up and made like a lake. And then these are water. There's several of these. They're 17 feet long. They're actually built like a Hebrew well like this, round in a circle with 2 walls, little stones in the middle, and then they would dig it out and make a well to save the water. They didn't drink out of the stream because the animals were there, okay, slopping it up and messing in it and all that stuff. So they put the purified water in these wells to feed the men, women, and children. And this is a picture of what I believe is the cave of Elijah. It's on the side of that mountain, just down below the brown things over here. Okay, there's the cave, I think, of Elijah. And it says in King 19, so he got up and went and drank. Okay, the angel came and gave him sustenance. Drank the vile food. He cried for 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God, where he went into a cave and spent the night. It's about 12 or 15 foot deep, by the way, this cave. Plenty of room enough for him to spend the night. And there he went in the cave and spent the night, and the word of the Lord came to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? And the Lord said, go out of the mountain. I can't read all the words. In the presence of the Lord. Read it. Tyler, I can't read it.
The Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord. For the Lord is about to pass by in a great and powerful wind, tore down the mountain apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake.
So Elijah, just stand out there, and I'm going to pass by. There was a great wind came, the Lord wasn't in the wind. There was an earthquake, the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. Keep reading.
After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper.
Okay. God spoke to him in a gentle whisper. So sometimes we're in the middle of trials, and we're in the middle of tribulations, and all the world is screaming at us. We can't hear God. Okay? Go where it's quiet. That's why they call it quiet time, where you can hear God speak to you. And that's what he was telling Elijah. Listen, Elijah, I'm going to tell you something. And he told him from this place right here, when Elijah heard it, he pulled up the cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. And the voice of God said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And if you know the rest of the story, I got it on here already. The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Ammon." So you remember, he was fleeing from Jezebel, and he stopped. Okay? Now God spoke to him, gave him strength, and he says, "Now you go back and finish the work." Okay? You go back the way you came. Okay? You don't have to stay here and wait on me. Go back the way you came, and when you get there, do what I told you to do. So this is God speaking to him, and I think he spoke to him from that cave. This is looking out on the wilderness down below the mountain from the cave inside. And then from that vantage point right there, you can see this is a large stream bed coming from the mountain. There's two of these. It comes from the top of the mountain all the way down to the bottom. And the Bible tells us in Exodus that there were streams coming from the mountain. So God put them to a place where there was water. This is in the northern part of Saudi Arabia. It gets cold in the winter. It snows up there sometimes. It does rain, not as much as it does here, but it rains 8, 10, 12 times a year. Okay? This would have been during the rainy season, I'm sure, it wouldn't have water. So God could make it have water anytime. But this is where the water ran, and the Israelites were camped all around it. Okay? And the wells are down here. Okay? And the rock of refuge is on the backside, way over here, on the other side of the mountain. As we were going up, our first visit there, this is actually the backside of the mountain. And you can see on the top of the side, they built an early warning station up on the top of that mountain. And this is a sign. We're driving up. We got Sandra, Jeff, and Jeep with their children. Me and Chris is behind them. And that's Sandra and Jeff here, and we're behind them taking pictures. You still see the excavation of the rocks going on. And we get up to this place here. This is a Saudi guard shack. And the Saudi walks out there with an AK-47 strapped around his neck. And he tells Jeff, "You can't go any further. Turn around and leave this mountain." That's what he tells him. He tells him in Arabic, but Jeff knew exactly what he was saying. Okay. I mean, you got the gun, I'm leaving. So he turns around, and Cricket and I never went up there. We just turned around and followed him on out and came down out of the place. These are some other interesting facts that we found along the way. I told you that Al-Bad is the place where Jethro lived. And Al-Bad is a little city that's about 40 miles south of the mountain. Maybe further than that. Here's Al-Bad, and here's Jabel Al Lawz up here. It may be over 40 miles. I don't remember exactly how many. But we traveled this road going up to the mountain, and we went all the way. We didn't know exactly where the mountain was, but we went all the way up to the top of Elat, and we came down the river, down the sea, till we found the crossing, and then we went up the Wadi, back on that road, and came down around to the backside of the mountain. On the way back, we stopped at Al-Bad right here, and we interviewed some of the people living there. And they said, "This is where Jethro lives." And not only does he live here, Moses came here. So Moses was there. I'll be back up just a minute. I'm going to tell you about the next picture before I get to it. On the trip before they got to the mountain, they were out of water, and they stopped at a place called Myra. And if you remember the story in the Bible, the water was bitter. Okay? It was somewhere here. We think they came down the edge of the mountain, not going over there, down the edge of the sea, and stopped at that place. And then they came on down to a place that had 70 palm trees and several whales. That Elam is the name of it. So that's going to be here, and I'll show you that. But anyway, we're talking about Al-Bad right now. This is a picture over next to the sea of a little stream coming out of down the mountain toward the sea, and it could have been, I don't know, it could have been the place higher with the water. It's the only water we found in that area that looked anywhere like this. So I think maybe it could be, who knows? We don't know exactly where that is. And then this is an area that is near Ellen, and it's got many palm trees, and not only does it have palm trees, it's got 12 wells of water. Okay, and that's exactly what it tells us in the Bible. Okay, this is Josephus talking about it, and then this is Exodus talking about it. Okay, they came to Ellen where there were 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped. There's one of the wells right there. So this is the place. It said the palm trees were not very pretty. They were kind of water starved or whatever. But the Bible says they did stop, and the palm trees were there, and there was water there. But they're always looking for water. This is the well at Al-Bada, and the locals tell you that this is the well of Moses, the well of Jethro. There's several pictures of it. And you'll notice it's a hand-hewed well. It's not they didn't have big diggers to dig it. They had to dig it with picks and whatever they had. It was the Bronze Age, so they had bronze utensils or whatever, and they would have dug this big thing completely out of the rock. And it just goes deep, and then here's a better picture of it right here. They built some steps to go down and continue to work. So this is what we think is the well of Jethro, the well that Moses went to feed the sheep and the goats of Jethro's daughter. Remember, he came up there, and the Amalekites were giving them problems about trying to take the water away from them, and Moses took them away, beat them back, and gave the ladies the water for the drink, and then he ended up marrying the daughter of Jethro, and had 2 sons by her. So that's a trip, and you can see now that Saudi Arabia is now open to tours. They just opened it in 2019. There it is. So you can get a tourist visa to Saudi Arabia today, and you can request to go to this place. They call it the tour to Mount Sinai. Okay, it's about $6,000. Of course, you got to go there, so you got to have a flight. And then this is the advertisement for that trip, $1,500, and it goes with these people here, Joel Richardson and Eli Sherman. Eli's Jewish, by the way. So they'll take you to see that place. So I had to show it to you. And then Patterns of Evidence is a series that's out now on video. You can rent these on
I have that.
You have it? Okay. Have you watched it?
Pardon me?
Have you watched it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The 2 parts that talk about the Mount Sinai are very interesting. They take 6 different locations across the Middle East. One of them being the current Mount Sinai that's in the Sinai Peninsula, and then Jabel Al Lawz is one. They take 4 other sites and they analyze them. Is there evidence? Is it in Midian? You know, what do they find? Is the place big enough for 2.5 million Israelites to camp? Is there any signs around it? You know, so they go through and they grade each one of the sites. And this one meets all the criteria. It's exactly like the Bible says it is. So, Jesus told the Pharisees, if you don't worship me, the rocks are going to cry out. The rocks are telling us today that the Bible is real, Jesus is real, and he's here to answer your questions and satisfy you with his salvation. So, believe it or not, I've been there. This is a rock up here. If you want to look at it, it's from the lower part, so it's not really light like the ones we're on. The higher you went up, the darker they got. But that's the bigger ones we can bring, and you're welcome to come up and look at it. It's pretty heavy. That young man brought it. Any questions? We have 5 minutes. Yes, sir.
I also have a video from that same series called the Moses Controversy.
Okay. Yeah, they try every way in the world to knock this theory down. You know, the world is against finding anything that validates the Bible. Yeah, they don't want it, okay? And they really haven't been able to get to this place and excavate it the way it ought to be. I mean, they really need to get, now that it's open for the last 5 years, they ought to get in there with archaeologists and excavate it and find to date the rocks in that altar, to date, to look for artifacts that are around there, because there will be some. It's never been dug up. You know, it's just there, okay? And it's been hidden for so many years. And people that went to Saudi Arabia, we kind of know it now. And we tell everybody that goes, hey, you need to go up and see that mountain. You know, we've told a lot of people, this is 25 years ago, you know, that I was there. And so there's a lot of people know about it, but the world doesn't know it. It's just coming out in video in the last 4 or 5 years. Okay? I had planned on doing a documentary. I'm kind of into that kind of stuff with videos and stuff, and I just never got to it. But these guys are making millions on this information right here.
So the fence is not up anymore, is that what you're saying, the fence?
I think the fence is still there, but I think they're allowed to go behind the fence in these tours, because I looked at one of their advertisements and it shows pictures of them behind it where the petroglyph rocks are, and they're standing right beside the rocks. Okay, we couldn't get close to them. I mean, the fence is about 25 feet away from the rock, so you really couldn't get close enough. You had to take a picture through the fence. But the pictures on this tour to Saudi Arabia, they're standing next to them. And they're standing up on top of the mountain, by the way.
They put the fence up to prevent people from going into the...
I think the Saudis put it up there to keep anybody from researching it, okay? Because they're Muslim. They don't want this area connected to Isaac and his people. They want it to be connected to Ishmael and his people, okay? And it doesn't fit their narrative. So they try to hide it. And I believe that column was taken. I believe that column, one day we'll find a column in a museum in Saudi Arabia somewhere.
We have the same problem with the Egyptians too.
Sure we do.
I don't prove that.
Yeah, the Egyptians, that's not the thing. If you start to uncover something, that's not.
The Egyptians have misadjusted the timeline of when the children of Israel were in Egypt.
Yeah.
And when they left and all of that.
They don't want you to prove
They
it.
don't want you to prove it. Right.
Have you ever heard of Frank Turk before?
Who?
You know who Frank Turk is?
No.
You ever heard of him?
No.
He has the same theory. He believes that they crossed over on the other side as well. And he teaches that apologetics and theology. And
Where's he from?
He's on TV like every week. I watch him, and he has a book called "I Don't Have an Effect of Being Atheist." Because he says it takes more faith not to believe in God than it does to
You
believe.
do, because the world, you know, the creation speaks to them. You have no excuse for not believing.
Right.
He's talking a lot about that Ron White too on the TV show. He's shown a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
He's shown altars from that bones from babies.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Bicycle babies.
There's actually two theories about where they crossed the Sea of Light. But one's where I say, the way on the land bridge. The other one's at the end of the Sinai Peninsula. It's called the Strait of the Strait of something. Anyway, it's about a 3-mile stretch. But I know there ain't no chance that 2.5 million people with carts and buggies and horses going across it. It's nothing but big rocks, big coral reefs, there's no chance you could have got across it. It's shallow. I mean, it's only 70 or 80 feet deep. But there ain't no way 2.5 million Israelites with old ladies and children and stuff went over that stuff. They never got there. You can't walk. If you've been down to Penny Camp State Park in Florida, you can't walk on the reef. You can't walk on the coral. And you didn't find any of that on this big sand plate. It's as smooth as it can be.
Well, is there any beauty there? Because I didn't see much.
You what?
Beauty.
It's all desert. It's all brown. Yeah, it's all brown. It's all bright. There were some, occasionally when it has some rain, the desert will bloom. They call it the desert blooms. And you'll see a lot of flowers and stuff come up because the seeds are there. But they don't do anything unless they get enough moisture to germinate. So, but there's no beauty. I mean, I think it's beauty because it verifies the Bible's true to me. It's beautiful to me to
At the
see.
same time that it's a narrative, they were wandering in the desert. God was letting them go through no beauty. But that's
Exactly.
the promise from God.
Exactly. For 4 years they wandered around this place. It says their clothes didn't wear out, their shoes didn't wear out. And God fed them every day. They didn't like it. Manna in the morning, quail at night, and they gave them all the water they could drink. And they had hundreds of animals, that they carried with them. And the Egyptians were good to them. When they left, the Egyptians gave them jewels and gold and stuff. The Egyptian family, not the pharaohs. But so they were well liked by the Egyptians before they left. And then that's what they built the golden calf out of. The gold was given to them along the way.
Well, I call that
how God is in our life. He took the Israelites, he fed them daily, like you said, and led them daily. Is he took them through a valley and sent them to a place there was no way out.
Exactly.
And then when there's no way out in our lives, he always creates a way.
Exactly.
He creates a way. So he could get the Lord.
Exactly. Look up. When you can't go any further, look up. You got a way.
Hey, my map, I'm looking at the map in the Bible, and it's similar. It's got Mount Sinai in the right place, but instead of crossing down as far south as there, it's got them crossing a little further north. But it's actually got Mount Sinai.
Yeah, there's a couple of different takes on where they cross it. One of them says they crossed at a lap. At the very top of it, you see a lot.
That's what this has.
Okay, I've seen that guy, I can't think of his name. But then Bob Cornick says they crossed at the very bottom of Sinai Peninsula. But I believe they crossed here.
At the end of that way, that land bridge makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, my daughter she does an article for the Messenger, if anybody ever watches it. She did 2 articles on her trip. That's very interesting to read it. One of them, I'm going to tell you, I got 1 minute, one more minute. We came down from a lap rented jeep. We didn't know how far it was going to be, but it was 40, 50 miles. And we're in the desert on the sea in the sand. And it was about noon when we left. So by the time we get there, it's almost dusk. We realized we got to spend the night. But we didn't have nothing. We didn't come with anything except a little bag full of snacks and stuff to eat and a couple of drinks. You know, we're thinking we're going to stay in some hotel or something. Well, that wasn't any hotel. So we're out there deciding, how are we going to stay tonight? We got kids with us, nowhere to go. It gets freezing in the middle of the desert at night. What are we going to do? So we're out there wandering around, and we're on the beach, and Christy walks up to a place on the beach, and there's a brand new big ladder laid on top of the sand that's almost never been struck. It's completely full, laid on top of the sand. And I said, praise God, we can start a fire, but we have nothing to burn. We're in the middle of the desert. There's nothing here. There's no trees, no wood, or whatever. So I called Jeff. I said, look, we got Christy found this ladder. I said, that's ladder, by the way. I said, brother. And Christy found this ladder. We can start a fire if you got anything to burn. He said, well, let's just look for stuff and see if we can find any. So he went one way, and I went another way, and I went around the sand dune, like you see down at Death Shores or Panama City or whatever. And behind that sand dune was a beam that was as long as that table. Wood. I don't know where it came from. Watched that from a boat or whatever, but it was something that was laying there. And I yelled at Jeff, and we got everybody over there, and we drug it around and set it down at where we were going to build a campsite, because we'd already built some rocks, and we said, okay, we'll build this fire here. We set that beam down on 2 other rocks, and we used it like a bench. And I said, now we just need something to go in this fire. And all the women were out. They started coming back with all kinds of little pieces of driftwood and all. So we had enough to burn, and we lit a fire. And we're sitting there, and I'm reading the Exodus to the family. And I'm talking about the Israelites and this kind of thing. And little Mackenzie, you saw her in the picture. You don't need to speak. She's sitting there. She said, Papa. She's looking across the Sea of Galilee. She says, I think I see the Israelites. You know, there were lots of people living up on the top of the mountain, and there were blinking lights. And she says, I think I see the Israelites. That's the mind of a child. Yeah. That's not what I was talking about, but that's what was in her mind. So anyway, that was the evening we stayed there. The next day, we drove up 17-mile wide on the side and dumped us out on the backside of the mountain. 7 o'clock. Any other questions? Yes.
How much that walkway, like, how many pounds?
I didn't pick it up. That's why I asked you to pick it up. It's probably about 30 pounds. Yeah. Anyway, any other questions? I hope you enjoyed it. I've got a lot of stories to tell. Do it next time.